In the search of the best Spider-Man figures ever made, on this channel I've looked at the Amazing Yamaguchi 1.0, the 2.0, the Hasbro Maximum Spider-Man, and the Mafex Comic Spider-Man. Outside of those and some other great domestic offerings, there's another import Spider-Man that is consistently in the conversation. A figure so highly regarded that multiple reissues later, it still goes for well over its retail price. The hype for it is extremely high. Some might even say too high. Why is this figure so beloved by the toy community? Outside of 1 to 2 examples, I can't think of any figure based on a movie being in the greatest of all time conversation, let alone a stand-in for a comic figure. Look at the 2014 Marvel Legends Amazing Spider-Man. There was a time when people were using this figure as their stand-in for a comic Spider-Man, which makes me wonder, can a figure of a comic book character not based on a comic be the best ever? Join me as we take a look at one of the most revered import figures of all time, the beloved Sentinel Peter B. Parker Spider-Man. Into the Spider-Verse changed the game not only for comic book films, but for the medium of animation, honestly. When it released in 2018, comic fans had pretty much never seen an adaptation be handled with such grace, such love and faith to the source material. The attention to detail was pretty astounding. Small things like how they used comic text boxes, show names of writers from Miles' comics, use actual covers of comic issues, make the film feel like a true love letter to the medium that we all love so much. The style of animation used was gorgeous. It's breathtaking to watch even 7 years later. The film was truly Miles Morales' movie, but after him, I found Peter B. Parker to be the most interesting and well fleshed out character. Getting to see Peter Parker in a mentor role and doing it so well was such a treat. I loved that the film treated him with respect, but also showed that he wasn't always just a perfectly infallible character and stayed true to his flaws as well as his strengths. In the film, there are 2 different Peter Parkers from different universes, and seeing them contrast each other just makes them even better. Peter B is compared to this glimpse we see of this other Peter, one who looks flawless and doesn't seem to make mistakes. That makes what we see from Peter B later in the film hit so much harder and helps us to connect with him even more. Because we are human beings, flaws and all, and Peter B reflects that way more than Spidey claws. Plus, the suit they give him is faithful to the comics for the most part, while still retaining some of his unique attributes. The character designs for Miles, Peter, and the rest of the cast were fantastic, and we're just waiting to have figures made of them. When I walked out of the theater in 2018, I wanted figures so badly, but unfortunately, I was out of luck, because Hasbro and other import companies took their sweet time giving us Spider-Verse figures. Hasbro gave us these figures early on, but I mean, let's just say we needed good figures from Into the Spider-Verse. It took a couple years, but Hasbro came around eventually and gave us these ones, and honestly, they aren't bad. Every time Hasbro takes a swing at these figures, they just get better and better. The plastic quality was alright, and it was about what you'd expect for $20 to $25, but I don't know, man, I like these Gwen and Noir figures. But these were not enough. Real ones knew that only an import company could truly give us the figures we needed, the figures we deserved. And after Hasbro took a swing at it, one import company stepped up. Mafex. I never got this guy, but the cloth goods were cool. Overall, he looked like a fine figure, I guess. But that wasn't all. Finally, after years of waiting for a definitive figure, Sentinel delivered. I missed the original release of this guy. When initial pictures came out, I thought he looked amazing, but honestly, I just wasn't in the financial place to get him at the time, as this figure was, and still is, not cheap. Also, at the time, I thought I had all the best Spider-Man imports already, and didn't need another one, but boy, was I wrong. When it got re-released, I jumped on it, and I am so glad I did because man, this figure is gorgeous. Fresh out of the box, and the first thing you'll probably think is, man, this figure is light. Like, there's no weight to this guy at all. It's not like he's super small, but he's just really lightweight, and that actually helps when displaying him. The second thing you'll notice is his look. This figure looks like it jumped straight off of the screen and into my lightbox. The design is so on model. He has incredible details. First off, the texture that is all over him is amazing. I love when a figure feels like how much you paid for it, and this figure feels expensive. There's detail and texturing all over. The only parts of this figure that are smooth are intentionally smooth. They copied the film design pretty much 1-to-1. Something odd about this guy is that the web lines are actually painted gold, even though they don't look like it depending on the lighting. I love when figures do this. Depending on how they're lit, they can have different appearances. It's one of the things I love about the Raimi suit that a lot of toy companies just don't get right. His webs are metallic, but not bright silver. Most of his body is covered in either a rough texture or web lines, except for his lenses and his spider symbol. These are done with a really slick gloss that makes them pop. Something unique about this figure is his proportions. There isn't a human being alive that is built like this, and unlike terrible figures with awful proportions, these are intentional, and personally, I really dig it. This figure has lanky arms and legs, and his feet look like Dr. Seuss feet. They're tiny, but I don't have too big of an issue with him standing usually. The paint apps were surprisingly good here, cleaner than I expected, but the articulation is where this figure truly shines. Look at a figure like the Revoltech 2.0 Spider-Man. That figure is known for being extremely articulated, and you can tell there are joints and cuts in the sculpt everywhere. What if I told you that this Sentinel is almost as articulated as the best Spider-Man without sacrificing the sculpt? The Sentinel Peter B, as well as the Miles Morales, but we aren't talking about him today, move incredibly well with less joints than its competition. Take a look at these shoulder joints. They are just a ball and socket joint, but you get this much range. It's actually unheard of. His arms move inward very far without having to maneuver the joints to just work correctly. It's awesome. Posing this Spider-Man might be the smoothest posing experience you can have with a Spidey. You may sacrifice a slight amount of articulation, but from a presentation standpoint, it's worth it. If you don't like how the Revoltech 1.0's shoulders look, or all the cuts in the sculpt of the 2.0, then you should have no complaints here. His leg range is incredible too. I don't think Sentinel could have done a better job with his arms and legs if they tried. Everything here is just so fluid and fun to pose. Zero complaints for me in the articulation department. His head and neck range is standard import stuff and just works really well. Accessory-wise, he comes with a lot, but it's not a home run like the detailing or articulation. I love the alternate masked head, and the fact that he comes with a swappable stomach piece is hilarious as well as essential. If the only way you could display the Spidey is with a bigger gut, he would not have nearly the acclaim that he does. This Spider-Man doubles as the Chris Pine Spider-Man we see at the beginning of the film, letting him represent a more classic-looking Spider-Man. Just like the rest of the body, these heads are detailed beautifully, but honestly, I am baffled by the faces they went with. Both Peter B faces are making really weird expressions looking to the side, and although they're well made, these expressions wouldn't make the top 10 of my most wanted looks. We couldn't get a serious face or a smiling face or even a tired face looking straight ahead. The Chris Pine Peter head looks great, but who will ever really be displaying this figure with that head on? Thankfully, they included glasses to throw on his face, even though I barely remember him using them in the film. The alternate heads were an easy slam dunk, and they just missed the mark for me. Speaking of missing the mark, may I present perhaps the biggest sin this figure commits? We have some wonderful hands here. Thwipping hands, open hands, crawling hands, a coffee holding hand, practically every hand you'd need. But where are the fists? 95% of the time, Spider-Man is punching bad guys in the face. Why does he not come with fisted hands? He has these web-holding hands, but they have these massive holes in the center that are way too big to double as regular fists. So glad you included some typewriting hands, Sentinel. I can think of so many scenarios where that will be useful. But fists? Nah, I'd never use those. This is a baffling choice to me, as fist hands are the first hands I would think to include, even over open hands or crawling hands. He also comes with thwipping hands that look great, but the webs are permanently attached to the hands, and I don't love that. He comes with web lines he can hold, as well as these clusters of webs so he can recreate the Spider-Man 2 train scene or the Homecoming boat scene. The stand is nice, even though I never use it, and if you balled out and got the deluxe edition, you got this massive tiger-looking gargoyle, which is pretty sick. The last accessory they included is this printed newspaper in the instructions, which you can cut out and have him hold. I love this attention to detail and the ingenuity on display here. If you bought the Mafex Peter B, you can put his cloth goods clothing on the Sentinel, but I only have the budget for one figure, so look at these reference images instead. Any old cloth goods you can find on eBay will fit on this dude too, as he's pretty skinny, but I need to get some sweatpants to really sell the look. Compared to the offerings by Hasbro, it's like comparing apples and a gold leaf steak. There is no comparison here. The closest match in quality is the Mafex, but from photos alone, I vastly prefer the Sentinel. The Mafex has a much shinier plastic and looks a bit cheaper, whereas nothing looks cheap on the Sentinel. Here he is next to the Mafex and SHF Tobey Maguire's. So, here's a question that maybe none of us can answer. Can a figure based on a movie and not a comic book be the best version of that comic character? I'd say it depends on what you're looking for and your tastes as a collector. If you care the most about comic accuracy, this guy isn't going to do much for you. Yes, he looks amazing, but he has cartoony proportions and a very stylized design. If your favorite version of the character is his representation in the Spider-Verse films, you can't do better than this figure, period. If you like your figures to articulate smoothly and achieve flawless vanilla poses with ease, this figure is pretty much perfect. The Sentinel Spider-Verse Peter Parker falls much more in line with the Mafex Spider-Man rather than the Revoltech offerings, as this thing is easy to use and make look good right out of the box. I have loved shooting this figure over the past couple years, and I can definitely say that in my opinion, he deserves a spot on a list of the greatest Spider-Man figures ever made. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.